This is a short summary of Virginia Woolf's to The Lighthouse. The novel is mainly divided into three sections, that is, the window, time passes, and the lighthouse. Now, the literary technique employed in this novel is stream of consciousness technique, that is, the novel or the plot progresses through the thought process of one or more of its characters. So let's move on to the very first phase of the novel, that is the window. Now, in this particular session, we see Mr. and Mrs. Ramsay. They are spending their summer vacation along with their 8 kids in their summer house, and the summer house is in Hebrides. So the situation is like their younger son, who is 6 years old, wants to go to the lighthouse. Both his parents, that is Mr. Ramsay and Mrs. Ramsay, they react to this particular situation in two different ways. Mrs. Ramsay, in a very motherly affection, tells her child that probably the weather will be good tomorrow and so we can go tomorrow. Okay. She tries to console the child by saying that there is a chance that the weather will be fine tomorrow, so we'll make it to the lighthouse tomorrow. But what Mr. Ramsay says is like, he says to the face that the weather is surely going to be bad tomorrow and the trip cannot be made tomorrow. So he is very clear in his reply to his child that they will not be able to go to the lighthouse. So that is how he does not want his children to remain in a fake world and to expect that tomorrow the weather will be fine and tomorrow they'll go to the lighthouse when nothing is going to happen. So Mr. Ramsay talks to the face that this cannot happen tomorrow, and so he gets the image of a cruel father who doesn't take care of the emotional status of his kids. And now there are many guests in this particular summer house, and one such guest is Lily Briscoe. Lily Briscoe is a painter who is painting the picture of Mrs. Ramsay when the novel opens. And when the novel ends that Lily Briscoe completes the painting. Okay. So Lily Briscoe is a young painter who is painting the portrait of Mrs. Ramsay. Mrs. Ramsay is portrayed as a very wonderful, very good homemaker who is capable of handling the emotional traumas her husband is undergoing. So her husband, that is Mr. Ramsay, is a very weak person. He needs to be reminded of his strength every now and then. So he goes to his wife, Mrs. Ramsay, and talks to her, and it is she who boosts up his confidence and thus maintains a balance in their family. So he is not confident. He is not confident enough to face the world, to face the harshness of the world. So it is his wife who boosts the confidence in him and who tells him that he is capable of doing such things. So, there is a party going on in the summer house of Mr. and Mrs. Ramsay. So, in the party, there are some people attending, and so these people are the guests in their summer house. So, we need to understand some important characters of them. Of course, Mr. and Mrs. Ramsay comes the first. Mr. Ramsay, as I already mentioned, is a person who is not very confident about the talents in himself, and he always wants himself to be boosted up by others. So it is his wife who completes him whenever he is incomplete. So Mrs. Ramsay, as already mentioned, she does her duties in a well organized manner, and she is portrayed as a very open, very confident woman who is always reminded of her duties. Then comes Lily Briscoe, the painter. Lily Briscoe, the painter, as the novel begins, she is the one who paints the portrait of Mrs. Ramsay, and it is towards the end of the novel that she tries to complete the portrait. Next we see Charles Tansley. Charles Tansley is actually a student of Mr. Ramsay, and Charles is very adamant in his attitude towards women. He says that women cannot paint or write. So he can be seen as an anti feminist character in this particular novel. Okay, then comes James Ramsay. James Ramsay is the young kid we already talked about, who is the 6-year-old kid when the novel opens, and towards the end of the novel, he is a sailor. As the novel closes, he is a sailor. And as the novel begins, he is a 6-year-old kid who insists his parents to take him to the lighthouse. Then William Banks. William Banks is a botanist, and it is William Banks whom Mrs. Ramsay expects Lily Briscoe to marry. So this is a brief discussion about the important characters into. Now we'll pass on to the second session of the novel, that is Time Passes. When the novel began, it was the time of First World War. The First World War was about to break out, and now the World War already has broken out, and the World War breaks out. Mrs. Ramsay faces her death. Andrew Ramsay, their oldest son, gets killed in the battle. Prue is one of their daughters, dies of some illness. So the family is all tampered now. It is not in that same old condition. The good old days of the family are gone. The strength of the family, Mrs. Ramsay, is gone. Two of the children are gone. So the family is already in a bad condition. They no longer return to their summer house now. Okay, the summer house is also facing a condition of destruction and dilapidation. And now, as the title of the section suggests, 10 long years passes. Time passes is the heading of the section, right? So 10 long years passes, and we see the summer house being tried to being repaired by a housekeeper, and it is Lily Briscoe who returns to the summer house now. And finally, we reach the final section, that is the third section of the book, that is to the lighthouse. And it is in this section that the family actually makes a trip to the lighthouse. Now, James is a very grown-up young man. He's a sailor now. He, his father, and his siblings make to the lighthouse now. Lily Briscoe is yet again portrayed here. As I already mentioned, Lily Briscoe is trying to complete the picture of Mrs. Ramsay. Okay. Mr. Ramsay is still the same old man who is in an emotional trauma always, who sets himself back to his family for emotional support, but there is nobody to support him like his wife always did, and at times his kids feel irritated when he is trying for an emotional help. So as the novel closes, Lily Briscoe is seen to complete her painting, which she. So as the novel ends, we can see that Lily Briscoe is seen completing her painting, and the family actually makes it to the lighthouse. So this is all about the novel To the Lighthouse by Virginia Woolf. So like, share and subscribe if you'd like to listen to more of the summaries.